Welcome to the Point News interviews. And today it's a real pleasure to have our guest, Garland Nixon. Hello, Garland.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
Sure, it's my pleasure. It's always good to hear your opinion. Let's dive right in. And I'm truly interested to hear your thoughts on the US elections that were won by Donald Trump. What can we expect from the new president?
Well, I think we can expect definitely a different direction when it comes to foreign policy. One of the things that I think that is different, particularly about the Trump administration and the Trump philosophy, the Trump worldview is this. The Biden administration and people who think like that have said, whether it's Vladimir Putin, the the president of China, the leader of North Korea, they have portrayed them as some evil dictators. You know, they're evil, they're angry dictators, and they can't be dealt with because they're so evil and dictatorial, right? And I think Donald Trump has taken a completely different perspective, which is they're strong people and they're tough people. And I don't fear them because I'm a strong person and I'm a tough person too. And that's what you need to run a major country is a strong, tough person. It turns the argument inside out that they can't be dealt with because um, they're dictators, they're angry, irrational people. Donald Trump is basically argues that they are strong leaders and they are rational leaders, but they're strong, rational leaders. And in order to get a deal with them, you must also be a strong, rational leader. And that the reason that the Biden administration and people like them couldn't get a deal with Vladimir Putin or wouldn't get a deal with President Putin or President Xi or whoever the case may be is because they're weak and they couldn't deal with strong leaders. So it is a different worldview, but it is a worldview that allows him to negotiate with world leaders that the Biden administration had condemned and refused to negotiate with. And rather than demonizing them as evil dictators, he has basically acknowledged, look, you're in charge of a large and powerful country and you have to be a strong leader. And I kind of respect that. And that's what we need to. So I think one of the things that's going to be very different about Donald Trump is his worldview, and rather than demonizing other world leaders, acknowledging them and acknowledging their legitimacy as leaders and their legitimacy as statesmen on the world stage, and recognizing that his job as the president of the United States is to have a constructive and transactional relationship with other powerful leaders and statesmen on the world stage. So it's a much more rational worldview when it comes to dealing with other powerful countries and world powers. So I think that's one of the things that will be noticeable. Do I have some complaints and disagreements with Donald Trump's foreign policy? Yes, because I think Donald Trump is the type that when it comes to the world powers, he has more respect for them and he wants peaceful negotiations. But I think when it comes to the smaller countries, he's going to still try to push them and bully them around a little bit, a lot. And I disagree with that. But so there are reasons to be optimistic about a Trump presidency, but it's not going to be a flowery bed of ease. And might I add, one of the things that will be significant about a Trump's presidency will be not his conflicts with exterior forces, but with the interior forces in the US government and in the European governments that don't want Donald Trump to have peaceful, constructive negotiations with President Putin or the other leaders of world powers and even regional powers such as Iran, et cetera. He's going to have a conflict at home. His big fight, he can get a deal with President Putin. He can get a deal with the leader of North Korea, but getting a deal with the people over there at the State Department and these people that have been around starting trouble and wars for decades is going to be his sticking point.
Should we expect Trump to be actively involved in resolving the conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine?
Absolutely, I think so. But I also think something that I've seen him do so far that I think is pretty wise, and that is he said, I'm going to I've selected an envoy an envoy, Mr. Kellogg, that many of us have reviewed his statements and had some problems with him as an individual, but he works for Donald Trump. We can't forget that. But I think that one of the things Donald Trump has recognized is that he needs, in what, for lack of a better word, I'll say a shield. Right. If he's going to get a deal with President Putin, if he just walks up to the Kremlin and says, President Putin, hey, let's strike a deal, he will be attacked by the usual forces here. Oh, he's a President Putin stooge or whatever, right? So when he puts an envoy forward and he tells the envoy, go talk to President Putin and get a deal. And then he, behind the scenes, says, well, look, no, we'll take this, don't take that, works it out, and they get a deal. It would be more difficult for the usual powers here, the media, et cetera, to attack Donald Trump because he'll be able to say, look, I selected an envoy. And that envoy worked out a great deal. And Donald Trump won't have to say announce the deal or whatever's going on in negotiations. He can have his envoy go on TV and speak for the negotiations on his behalf. So I think it is Donald Trump will selectively use surrogates, envoys, ambassadors, etc., delegates, whatever term you want. He's going to selectively use people to speak for him on the international stage and to work behind the scenes and even in front of the scenes to get deals. I also think informally that there's something else that's afoot, shall we say. I think that Donald Trump also is going to seek to use like-minded leaders around the world, particularly, I can name a few, Viktor Orban, the Robert Fico in Slovakia. So I think Donald Trump is also going to use world leaders that align with his view on a particular issue, in this instance, ending the Ukraine conflict. I think he will selectively use them to magnify his power and ability to affect the situation. So I think there will be internal envoys, delegates, ambassadors such as Kellogg, but I think externally, Fico's, Orban's, and other people that he can find that he can work with will be part of the equation that he uses to try to get a deal. I hope he does. I'm optimistic about it, but we don't know until it happens.
What do you think about Syria? Can this be considered the beginning of a larger war?
I think the people who there's an old, and you may be familiar with the saying that we have in the U.S. that a person has bitten off more than they can chew, right? They've taken on a bigger task than they're actually able to actually handle. Another saying that we have for children is your eyes are bigger than your belly. In other words, you want all of this food, but you can't. But if you try to eat it all, it'll make you sick, right? You want this something, but it's more than you can handle. I think that's the issue with Syria. I think that whether it's, Erdogan in Turkey or the neocons here, the Israelis, they all had an eye on Syria. Oh, if we could only overthrow the government of Syria, we'd have it made. Now they've overthrown the government of Syria, but the people that they have in charge of Syria are not the most stable people on earth. And I would guarantee you this, there will be a legitimate resistance, most likely an armed resistance in Syria. And to be frank, if I were the Russians or if I were the Iranians or if I were someone else that had issues with the overthrow of the government, I may be inclined to provide arms support and or money for the resistance. So not saying that they will or won't. The Russians and Iranians and all may think far different than me. I just think that the Americans and their quote allies who have overthrown the government of Syria will find within months, if not years, that they have a mess on their hands. And to some extent, they may be calling on the Russians saying, please help us get out of this mess.
Will the new leadership be better at handling issues faced by the population?
Well, one thing's for sure, they can't be any worse. That's for sure. That can they be worse than the new leadership in the U.S.? It's hard to be worse than the Biden administration for this reason. They're neocon. We use this term here, neocon. I just use the old-fashioned word. They're fascists. These people are fascists. The Biden people and his ilk are fascists. And one thing about fascism, in my opinion, is a dedication to war. Right. And so they're dedicated to external conflict, which means that they completely ignore the needs of the people. That's why they got beat so bad in America. That's why they lost a lopsided, one-sided election to Donald Trump, and they had no idea that it was coming. The Biden people talked about their messaging. Oh, we need to say to the working class this, or various demographics. We need to tell women that we're going to do this. We need to tell black voters we're going to do this. We need to tell short voters we're going to do that, and tall voters we're going to do that. They sliced the population in their minds up into all of these various groups and demographics, and they had to have a message for each one of them. And what they forgot was what they were doing was screaming so loud that people couldn't hear what they were saying. People voted based on the way they governed, and the way they governed was 20 billion. And I heard this. I literally heard this from many people. They've always got more money to go to Ukraine. So what you had was people saying, well, you just sent another $80 billion for this war in Ukraine, but yet I'm having difficulty making ends meet myself. Right? It's like a child who sees their parents going out spending money on a new fishing rod and all of these things that they want, and the child is hungry, and the child's clothes are not, and they see the parents spending money on lavish things that they enjoy, ignoring the family needs. That was the dynamic that America saw. They saw the Biden administration spending money on things all over the world. Oh, we've got to deal with Korea, Taiwan, you name it. And the people here were saying, what about us? So that's why I say you can't be worse than ignoring the American people. And I think one of the things that Donald Trump intuitively recognized was that, you've got to deliver for the people. I mean, I'm not saying the Russian government is perfect, but they have somewhat delivered for the Russian people. If you're a Russian person and you lived in the 1990s and you're alive today, the world is far better for you today than it was in the 1990s. They've seen an improvement in their lives. Even people in Russia, you look over the last 10, 15 years, you've seen the country become stronger, become militarily stronger. Economically, it's gotten better, more respected around the world. You see an improvement in your country. And I think Donald Trump, the Trump administration recognizes that that is a dynamic that he is going to have to address. And whether he can, I don't know, because there are some structural problems economically with this neoliberal disaster that we have. That's an economic model. But I'm just saying, I think the Trump administration will make an effort to improve the living conditions and the economic plight of the working class here. Whether they will be successful, well, that's a whole nother show.
Moving forward, what we see now that the world is currently experiencing a staggering number of upheavals and military conflicts. What would you say to people currently living in countries at war? Will there ever be peaceful world?
I would say this, a couple of things for the countries at war. While, in fact, we are in a very dangerous time where the U.S. empire has overextended itself and out of desperation is creating conflict all over the place, trying to hold on to domination of the world that it's already lost. It's very irrational. And so certainly we are in dangerous times. However, and this is important, after 1945, the United States created an economic infrastructure that allowed them to dominate the world economically. The World Trade Organization, the IMF, right? The World Bank, all of these things, the SWIFT system that allowed the US from Washington, D.C. and the city of London, but mostly from Washington, D.C., to control the economics of these countries, small countries all over the world, and to some extent, large countries. That because of BRICS and other economic institutions that are arising, I think the future is bright. I think the future is bright for Africa. The future is bright for Latin America. That what has happened is these countries have had great resources, but they haven't been able to benefit from them because the West, the colonial powers come in and basically steal the profits of their resources. I believe that the new economic infrastructure in BRICS and other things that are being, I forgot the name of the bank. There's a bank, an investment bank that China is funding, and China and Russia, mostly China's funding, but they're building. These types of things are creating a new infrastructure economically where countries that have these great resources will be able to benefit from them and improve the lives of their citizens. So I would say that a lot of these countries that are at war, the future is bright. Um, and there are options that are arising that have never been there, haven't been there before. So hold on, continue to do the best you can to survive, and then support BRICS, support I forgot the name of the Chinese investment bank, support the movement to a new economic infrastructure, a new economic um, landscape that I think, will be much more fair and open for countries that don't have the military and economic power to stand up to the likes of, the U.S. or France or Europe, et cetera.
How can ordinary people convey the idea of peace to politicians?
One of the ways, and you have to be careful for this, but one of the ways is, taking to the streets and doing protests. But you have to be very wary of that, because that is one of the games that the U.S. uses, to try to do color revolutions, to create these fake protests, to fund these fake protests, to cause violence on the street and try to destabilize countries. The good thing, as we see in Georgia, is that the people of the world are getting wise to it. They tried it in Iran, it didn't work. Certainly, they tried it in small ways in Russia. So be very wary of fake protesting and attempted color revolutions. I think that the other thing is that one of the things that the U.S. and MI6, the Brits, try to do is to put these, they call them NGOs, non-governmental organizations, which in fact they're nothing but governmental organizations, but they try to put these in countries. They try to fund them and use them to destabilize the countries and to drive the conversation in that country and in the direction of a Western domination. So I think that people can throughout these various countries can make sure that they do not align themselves with these Western supported nonprofit organizations, which are nothing but, a cat's paw for U.S. imperialism and U.S. domination. They should do that. Also, what you're doing is very important. And what I'm doing is very important. And that is, we're doing alternative media, and we're doing it honestly. And we're trying to have an honest discussion with normal everyday people. So what you're doing right here, just interviewing me or whoever you interview, these are the types of things that ordinary people can do to try to improve our general situation by exposing people to alternative perspectives outside of those that are the dominant world powers.
Let's talk about BRICS, which is becoming a powerful group of countries sharing the principles of multipolar world order. What do you think the future holds for BRICS, and why are more countries eager to join?
Well, what's interesting is this. My dad used to have a saying, the same thing that will make you laugh will make you cry, right? So the BRICS, you can look at it and say, hooray, everybody wants to get in. But by the same token, that's tough, because BRICS has not built the infrastructure yet to, everybody wants to get in, but BRICS is not ready for everybody to get in yet. It's not prepared for that. So the good news is that BRICS is popular, that the United States created BRICS actually by dominating and pushing people around to a point where they wanted, as I always say, any place is better than here. They've created a dynamic where people want to have a way that they can do economic and monetary exchanges, where they can buy and sell things based on the value of what they're buying or selling, rather than having this political group come in and say, no, you can't buy or sell that from that country because we don't like that country, or we don't like you, so you can't buy and sell your own goods, or we'll overthrow your government and put somebody in power that'll give it all to us for free. So I think that BRICS is growing, and the leaders of BRICS, which are clearly Russia, China, mostly, but Russia, China, India, are wise enough to understand that they can't grow too fast. if they were to try to bring in everybody, it would fall apart. There'd be too much right now. So I think that the future of BRICS is a measured growth, that they are only going to grow as fast as they can handle. They're not going to move. And everybody wants BRICS to create a new currency. I think they understand the dangers in that if they don't do it right, it's going to cause them a lot of trouble and it has to be done right. So the good thing, I think, is that the people who are running BRICS understand they can't move too fast. They can't grow too fast. The things will get out of hand and it'll fall apart. And they're going to be measured in their way of doing things, which I think guarantees long-term success. I think the countries, then the people who want to get in BRICS and be involved in BRICS are going to need to understand that they have to be patient. The colonial powers of Europe have been robbing and stealing and pirating around the world for centuries. And you're not going to have a 1 year or 2 year period where you suddenly create a new organization that fixes all of that. It's going to take time. Patience is going to be required. But luckily, the people who are running things are patient and measured. And I don't think they will get too far over their skis, as they say.
Well, it's always step by step.
Yes.
At the beginning of no matter what kind of organization. Shifting to sports, which has become closely intertwined with politics. It seems there's a strong political pressure on the sports sector today. It's almost like a battleground. Take the recent Olympics in France, where there was balanced LGBT propaganda at the opening ceremony, or the constant suspensions of athletes for political reasons. What's really going on? Shouldn't sports be separate from politics?
Okay. And to that, you have to simply go back to one phrase: full spectrum dominance. What that means is this, that everything is a weapon. So for the neocons, for the fascists, everything's a weapon. It doesn't matter if sports, there's a famous, I love, martial arts movies. I love the martial arts stuff and self-defense. And there's a famous guy, I don't know if you've heard of Jackie Chan. So Jackie Chan makes these martial arts movies and somebody chases him into a room and he grabs all of the plates from the people are eating with and he throws them at him. He goes in the next room. There's a picture on the wall. He grabs the picture and hits the guy in the head with the picture. In the next room, there's a ball. He throws anything around him. He's going to throw it at you, hit you with it, whatever. Everything is a weapon. That's kind of a Jackie Chan movie, right?
Point taken.
That's exactly, you get my point. It's not sports. It's that anything for these people is to be used. It's the weaponization of everything. Space, great. We can use space for a war. Water, we can use water for a war. Sports, great. How can we go after the Russians and the Chinese or whoever using sports? So to me, it's not just sports as an individual issue that's being weaponized. It is a mentality that says I weaponize everything against my adversaries to the detriment of the people. We want to watch the Olympics. We want to see the best athletes. We want to cheer and have fun. We want to watch various sports. I like basketball. There are a lot of Russians, right, that are really good at basketball. I want to see them here so I can watch them. What about ice hockey? Here, one of the greatest ice hockey players in history plays right here in Washington, D.C., and I remember when he was a while back, he says, oh, yes, I like President Putin. Well, they went after him in the paper. And I'm like, but he's from Russia. He's not allowed to like the president of his own country. Again, everything is weaponized. That's what we need to understand about sports. And hopefully the Trump administration won't be leaning towards this full spectrum dominance in a way that weaponizes everything. And we can just go back to, we've got the Olympics, there's weightlifting or basketball or ice hockey or whatever they're playing. Let's put the athletes out there and see who's best and not weaponize that to say, well, this country can go, that country can go, these athletes can, oh, those can't, because that has nothing to do with the sport. But they use it for everything. Well, we can't watch movies with people in this, whether it's, let me add this, our entertainment, Same thing. People are tired of the movies. Every movie that we have now is the same thing. It's some woke variation of, international foreign policy. There's every superhero movie has a diverse group of women. You know what I mean? There's like a black woman, a white woman, and a Native American woman, and they're tough and strong and they beat up all the men. People just want a superhero movie. Every one of them doesn't have to be Superwoman. And so, but that again, full spectrum dominance in the entertainment sphere, the sports sphere, no matter what, we've got to use all of those as either, let me add this as an American, they're used either as a weapon to go after Russia or China or whoever, or as a propaganda tool to brainwash us. We've had enough of that crap. And I think that the recent election is, in fact, um, an example of Americans acting to push back against the weaponization of everything.
Yeah, in the new year, the election for the new president of the International Olympic Committee will take place. Should we expect any changes after Thomas Bach?
Well, I'll say this. I don't think it's as much the president in so many ways. Look, the U.S. Dominates a lot of these international organizations, the UN, the OSCE, the organization that's supposed to deal with chemical weapons, right? Organization for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons, OPCW. So these lunatic fascists right now that are running our government run all of these organizations and use them as tools. So it's not so much who's in charge as whether or not they'll be getting the calls from Washington, D.C. that say, you better do this or you better do that. Maybe they'll get a call from Washington, D.C. that says, look, nah, we're not so much into that anymore. Do what you want with the athletes of all countries. So I do think it would be wise for the BRICS countries to begin to have their own games, to begin to have their own sporting events. I think it would be wise for this reason, because they got most of the world. And what you'll end up with is all of these great athletes from all over the world, from like the majority of the world coming together for tremendous athletic events that are popular and watched all over the place. And the U.S. and its allies putting together what they can put together. But the BRICS countries have a lot more. And the global South and Russia and China, they got a lot more people. So I think that while we can hope for changes in international sports, I do believe that while the BRICS countries, Russia, China, etc., should push for a return to a time when sports weren't used as political weapons, I think they also should create and build their own sports culture. And I think it would be beautiful to see that happen.
I believe that sports should unite people.
Yes.
That it's a good thing. And now a final philosophical question. It's my favorite part of the interview.
Mine too.
What's the meaning of life? That's the first one.
Well, okay. So as a man who studied Zen for many years, my argument there's a problem in the question, because from a Zen perspective, number one, the meaning of life is that life is life. That is the meaning. We're here. If you think about it, the meaning of life is a human concept. Life is not a human concept. It's something that happens. We create a meaning of life for ourselves so we can try to understand things. It's something for us to talk about. If I walk through the forest and I see a bird flying, that bird is not flying for a reason. He's not thinking, well, I'm a bird, I guess I got to fly. No, it is his nature to fly. That's what makes him a bird, right? So the things that happen are the nature of this universe. This is the way things work. This is the way people work. This is the way the world works. And we can give it a meaning, but the meaning doesn't affect the world. For instance, I could have the meaning of life, and then you could, and 100 million people could all say the meaning of life is this. And to each one of us, that would be true, and that would be our personal meaning of life. There are people who get depressed and die and get sick, and they say, why? Because my life has no meaning. Well, but if they were to wake up tomorrow and meet with someone and and they were to go to someone who they thought was a brilliant philosopher, and they were to say to that person, I'm upset and depressed because my life has no meaning. And that person was to say, okay, I'm going to give your life a meaning. Your life's meaning is this. They could walk away with a smile. Great, my life has a meaning now. I feel good. What's changed? A sentence. The person told them they had a meaning. Nothing in their life changed. Nothing changed except that they believed that they had a meaning. And if you believe that you need a meaning in life, you need one. But if you don't believe that you need a meaning and you're just living life and enjoying it, you don't need a meaning. Birds don't need a meaning. Trees don't need a meaning, but they seem to exist fine. We create a dynamic where we need a meaning. I don't need a meaning in my life. I do things because I enjoy it. When people say, why do you do this, Garland? Are you trying to change the world? Like, nope. I'm doing this because this is what I do. This is what I enjoy doing. I say what I believe. And one of these days I'll be gone. But while I'm here, I'm going to do what I do. It is the nature of Garland Nixon to do the things that he does. Then you can call that a meaning if it works for you. I just simply call this the nature of who I am. I know I said a lot, but I don't know if it makes any sense. But who cares?
Interesting point. I share it with you. And the last question, the final one. What should a person definitely achieve in their life?
Well, from the perspective of if I go Zen, it's enlightenment, right? Enlightenment is what you want. You want to understand reality, right? But I think what a person should achieve in life to me is happiness within oneself and love for yourself and an understanding of yourself. Because you can't be, I'll put it like this. If you ever go on an airplane and you go fly on an airplane, and what they say is they go over the safety beforehand and they say, here's what you do. If the cabin loses pressure, these little things will drop down with oxygen. And let's say you have a child or a senior that needs help, right? First, put yours on and then put theirs on. Because if you struggle to put theirs on and you can't get it on and you run out of oxygen, you pass out and you both die. If you put yours on first, now they may even be struggling for oxygen, but you've got oxygen, you're thinking clearly, and you can help them get theirs on. You can't help anyone if you don't first help yourself. You can't improve anyone else's life if you're not in a mindset to improve, to improve anyone's life. So you must work on yourself. You must not improve yourself, but accept yourself as you are. Laugh at it. One of the things people go around saying, I've got fill in the blank, depression, ADD, OCD. They've got all of these things to say about themselves, all of these frailties, craziness, sick. And here's what I say. We're all crazy. We're all completely nuts. We're insane. Accept it. Laugh at it. Smile about it. Embrace it. If someone says, you're absolutely crazy, say, yes, I am. And I'm very happy about it. And I'm happy this way. It's not, no, I'm not crazy. We're all some level of crazy. Enjoy it. Accept yourself. That way, you won't be offended. If someone walks up to you and says, you're crazy, the concept is you're supposed to say, well, how dare you call me crazy? No, I'm not. And then you defend yourself instead of, why, thank you. I absolutely am. And I enjoy the brand of crazy that I have. Then what do? If someone says, you're stupid, you're ugly, well, you've got a right to that opinion, and I respect your opinion. I may disagree with you, but that's okay too. If once you become strong within yourself, you never get offended anymore. You simply respect other people's rights to their decision or their feelings or belief about you. And no matter what they say about you, you're already defined. This is me. This is who I am. You can't redefine me. For yourself, you can. You can call me all kinds of names and things like that. I could look at a tree and I could call it a bicycle. Doesn't matter what I call it. It's a tree. And that tree knows it's a tree. And it's not going to get upset because you call it a bicycle. That ain't going to change anything. So it is to get a emotional strength and philosophical strength within yourself, that you're happy with who you are, that you accept who you are, and that you don't have to have a reason to do things. Why do you do that? Because I enjoy doing it. That's good enough for me. And if you don't like it, then find another reason, whatever makes you happy. So I think that's important. It's an individual strength and growth.
That's a really good thought. I think it's a good motivation for our audience. And what I want to say is where you're worth it. Just move on and you're good enough. So I think people should hear that and they should move on and be motivated and stay updated with Points News.